I would say it's a fairly limited part. It's not. We don't know, for example, what the premier has in terms of religion, what his affiliation is.
Too much.
I prefer to have no religion in anything at all.
Luckily, I think that politicians keep their religion and their issues politically separate.
Politicians have certain individuals they got to answer to, and I'm sure religion has a great deal to do with it.
I think that everyone in Alberta realizes that there's a difference between sin and crime, and I think we're lucky enough to have that kind of a separation.
Religion plays a part on every level, in every aspect of life.
Some Albertans there commenting on the role of religion in provincial politics in our province, and we're debating just that with the author of The Armageddon Factor, Marcy McDonald. We've also got Jim Blake here from Concerned Christians Canada. Jim, I'm wondering if you can tell me how often your organization is meeting with, talking to, writing to Alberta MLAs and MPs. Can you think of maybe specific policies or legislations that perhaps you've contributed to?
Yes, actually, we lobby, as you already announced, that we lobby all three levels of government for traditional family values and Christian values. And recently in Calgary, there was a bylaw that was going to limit the rights of all Calgarian citizens. And that was a bylaw that was to expand the municipal complex boundaries at City Hall to basically effectively shut down protests at City Hall. It would have made it illegal to protest at City Hall. And so we appeared with a number of other organizations, not all of them being Christian. There were people who were from lobby groups that were involved in for example, employment lobby groups and things like that do normally protest at City Hall on a regular basis. We appeared with them and spoke to that panel that was looking at passing this bylaw that would have, in fact, made it illegal, and there would have been 41 different fines that a person could have been fined under if they had protested at City Hall. So in that particular case, and before you interrupt, this is a situation where, again, we're not looking to provide or to speak into lawmaking situations to only create laws that benefit Christians. These are laws that really shouldn't be put in place, and they're not to the benefit of any citizen, let alone Christian citizens. So we speak into the political realm, into whether it be into political campaigns, whether it be in lawmaking process, whether it be in forums that are discussed. And as citizens, we have that right.
Absolutely, you do. We'll try to get to everybody else with the time that we've got left here. Professor Irving Hexam, U of C, politicians have an obligation, as Jim rightly points out, to listen to all of their constituents. Do they have an obligation to let the public know who they are listening to as they explore and develop policy?
Well, I think, yes, that's right, and it should be very clear who's lobbying and who isn't, and we've got laws to that effect. But in fact, I think if you look at the overall picture, the number of Christian lobbyists is very small compared with other lobbyists. So one's got to get a balanced view, and one's got to remember that there are groups like Citizens for Public Justice, which is a major Christian lobby group that lobbies for aid to the third world, so-called third world, that lobbies for all sorts of things which would be seen as not moral causes, but practical causes to help people in poverty and to help alleviate poverty. So this is the sort of thing Christians also lobby against. Right. Here in Calgary, for example, a good example of Christian action would be the Mustard Seed street ministry, which most people are familiar with. And so I think it's a complex issue.
Marcy, you've got lots of other specific examples in your book, and I'm just wondering if you think, historically, obviously, Alberta seeing religion as a huge role in our early provincial politics. Do you see history beginning to repeat itself in that same way now in our current times? And how tolerant do you think Albertans might be as we become more multicultural of religious groups in particular, since that's what you're writing about? How tolerant would we be of them having the ear of our MLAs and MPs?
Well, I'm not as familiar with Alberta politics as you are, but what
the history shows us you had two premiers, William Eberhart and Ernest Manning, both of whom managed to be Sunday radio preachers as well as premier, but they didn't impose a particularly religious agenda upon the province. And in fact, it's interesting that Preston Manning, Ernest's son, never wore religion on his sleeve as head of the Reform Party either. The difference with the current government is they have chosen to use religion as a party-building electoral strategy. Some would say that's quite a cynical and dangerous move because it opens the way to these wedge issues and to driving a wedge between factions. The other thing is that, yes, there have always been Christian groups wanting a voice with government. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I don't say there's anything wrong with that. What we don't hear about is that this new breed of lobbyists, they aren't registered as lobbyists. And in fact, most Canadians do not know how much influence they have had in Ottawa. I think it's important they know. I think it's a good debate that we should have about the extent of religiosity we want in our politics and in our government. If nothing else comes from this book, and it just simply opens up debate about that,
certainly
then
has.
Perhaps it's not a bad thing.
That's probably the one thing everyone does agree on. The debate is on. And thank you so much for all of you for participating in ours here today. Author Marcy McDonald, Professor Irving Hexham from the U of C, and Jim Blake from Concerned Christians Canada. Thank you all for your time tonight.